Well, it's great to see all of you here. A lot of old friends, some new friends. And first, a disclaimer, this class is called Inside Chamber Music, and I'm up here all by myself. If you look at the sequence of classes, there's one person here tonight. Then next week, Julia Lee will join me. And then we'll gradually increase and multiply, getting up to quartet and then I'll tell you a little bit more about the specifics of the classes after I play some Bach. But I wanted to talk about how I can justify playing solo Bach when the class is called Inside Chamber Music. It's a bit of a stretch, but let's just say that Bach wrote these pieces for basically a one-note instrument, but somehow he managed to create multiple voices. And some of these voices are explicit and played, and some of them are implied and made up by you, the missing notes. It's really an incredible feat what he managed to do, which I don't think has really been equaled, although there are a lot of wonderful solo cello pieces after the Bach suite. It's just astounding what he was able to do to create basically in the mind of the listener sometimes a three-voice composition. And I'm going to demonstrate some of these aspects, maybe to give you a little more insight into the inner workings of these pieces and some of the considerations that a cellist needs to bear in mind. So these things come alive and the piece is not a dry, boring piece of classical music, which is, of course, failing the mission. There's absolutely nothing dry or boring about Bach, but I grew up with my first big hero, Pablo Casals. My parents introduced me to him as a musician and a human being, as a heroic man of principle, and also someone who loved Bach more than any other composer, I think, and also advised cellists and other musicians not to fear Bach. It's very easy to put this music up on a pedestal and feel like whatever I do with it is going to somehow be a blemish or not be worthy. Casals pointed out that Bach was a human being. I always like to remind people that Bach had 20 children, so he wasn't only good at composing, and he was very prolific and a wonderful teacher too. So the problem is that Bach didn't give us any instructions. We don't even have the original manuscript of these suites. We have copies made by his wife, Anna Magdalena, and a couple other contemporaries. And none of those copies has any indication about volume or dynamic or anything. The notes are there, and that's it. If you just play the notes, it's boring. It's still interesting in a way, but it's not music. Casals used to say you have to find how to realize what's not on the page. Casals used to advise people when the notes ascend and go up, try making a crescendo. And when they go down and get lower, make a diminuendo. That's already a very valuable suggestion, and sometimes that feels very natural. I want to show you a little excerpt in the middle of the prelude I just played, and I'm just going to play it for you absolutely straight as it looks on the page. I'm going to take a chance and leave that on and see if it doesn't mind. Okay, straight. So those are the notes. So when I was 16, I played this for Janos Starker in a lesson, and he said, "Are you aware what the melody is in this passage?" Clearly, I was not aware. And he actually sang and played the passage, but I'm just going to play the melody for you. So those notes that I'm vibrating and sustaining are not sustained in the piece. They're just one of many 16th notes. But if you love those notes a little extra, if you give them a little vibrato, which is one sign of affection, and maybe you hold them a little longer, in other words, use a little rubato, so they're emphasized by virtue of their length, and then you ease up on the accompanying notes. Then when I play the passage, you actually hear that there's a melody, and you hear there's also an accompaniment underneath or on top, depending on what the long note is. I'll try to play it now in the way I like to play it, which is to show that there's a melody and an accompaniment. So maybe that worked. And whether you're aware of it or not, I think if you listen to someone play it in that way, then you are hearing a melody, an interrupted melody that is continued after some in-between notes. The suites are full of these mysteries. They're full of mysteries, and I've been playing these suites for about 60 years now, and I keep finding more and more surprises and things that I didn't know were there. And I'm sure if I had another 60 years that I could play the suites, I would keep finding more and more